Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades, the show where we talk about developing skills, exploring ideas, and following curiosity. I'm your host, Orion Siebert, and in this episode, I share my thoughts on procrastination, in particular, how to combat procrastination and do more of what you really want to do. In this episode, listen in as I discuss why do we procrastinate, is procrastination really a problem, and how can we overcome procrastination, and much more. Be sure to listen to the end where I share my best tips that I've used in the past to overcome procrastination and do more of the things I really want to do. These are the tricks I used in college to work part-time, write my first book, start silversmithing, and much more, all while maintaining top grades. If this sounds interesting to you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more episodes like this where I share my tips and tricks on doing more of what you love. I think that about covers it. So, without further ado, how can we overcome procrastination? Before we can discuss how to overcome procrastination, I think it's important to start off with what procrastination is. In particular, why do we procrastinate? For me, there are two main ideas that came to mind. There's fear-based procrastination and there's distraction-based procrastination. Let's start with fear-based. There are many key elements of procrastination, and fear-based in particular. One idea that came to mind for me is that people often don't start things or put off starting things due to fear of failing. So if you don't start in the first place, you aren't going to fail. There's this lingering thought in the back of your head of, what will people think of me if I try to do this thing, if I talk about doing this thing, and it fails so horribly? They're going to mock me, they're going to laugh at me, all of that. Along those lines, perhaps you just don't think you can do, perhaps you don't think you can do it, or you won't even try. Perhaps it'll be too difficult, or you perceive it to be too difficult, and along the same lines of that, perhaps you have a massive level of perfectionism where you're not going to start something unless you think you can do it absolutely perfectly, and you're confident that you can do it absolutely perfectly. So there's an element, that's what I say when I think there's an element of fear of failure to procrastination. At the same time, there's also a weird sort of inverse idea of it, of the fear of success, where you start to think, what would people think if I actually did the thing? Oftentimes when starting out and doing something that's new, unique, different from the crowd, different from the herd, people often go out and support them to say, yeah, that's awesome, go and do that thing. Up until the person starts succeeding, then the people who once supported them suddenly become their enemies, suddenly become people to try to tear down the individual who's stepping out of the way, who's stepping away from everything else, who's actually putting in the effort to go and do something they want to do. And there's this innate idea that the nail that sticks out the most is the first to get hammered. The tall poppy gets cut. It's this idea that if you go out and you do something different, that people will look down on you, that people will say, oh, that person was too good for us, or they think that they're too good for us now, where this becomes almost an innate fear of success, that the people around you might not accept you if you go out and you actually do the thing that you said you want to do, because those people will maybe start to think for themselves, well, if they could do it, maybe I can do it as well. But no, I don't want to develop that sort of confidence in myself, so I'd rather try to tear down this person back down to my level than to put in the effort to climb out from where I am to reach their level and perhaps beyond. That's what I think about when I'm thinking about the idea of fear-based procrastination. There's fear-based from fear of failure, and there's also a fear-based from fear of success. But that's probably not the most common form of procrastination. Probably the most common form comes in the form of distractions and escapes. For example, just having a lack of discipline and self-control, where if you're presented with the donut, you gotta eat the donut, or if you're presented with the thing that's taking you off track from what you really want to do, it's the dog squirrel syndrome, where you see a shiny object and you say, ooh, shiny, I gotta go follow that thing. Good old shiny object syndrome, where you cannot focus on the immediate thing at hand, especially if that immediate thing is important, and the immediate thing is the thing that you want to do. But something else new comes up and you say, ooh, that's shiny, that's different, I want to go and do that. So there's this element of distraction that immediately pops up, and not having the self-control to say, that's interesting, maybe later, but right now I have to do this thing. Perhaps it's boredom around doing the thing. This often lasts, in my experience, boredom around doing the thing, especially if it's something you really want to do, is often only lasts for the first little bit. I'll discuss this a little bit more later about overcoming procrastination, but in general, people cannot, this is a being unable to overcome activation energy, is what I call it, where oftentimes when we're starting something new or we're starting something difficult, even if it's something we want to do, we have to exert a certain level of activation energy. And then once we exert that and we get over it for the first couple minutes, then suddenly it's a avalanche of energy and dopamine and awesomeness to be able to say, yes, the first little bit sucked, but once I got past that first little bit, I fell into flow, it was awesome, it was great, and I just kept on going with it. Another example of distraction-based procrastination is perhaps you have too much mental overhead or stress to the point that you just can't focus on anything. This is one that is mostly, you have to deal with it in different ways. For some people, you do have to procrastinate. So for some people, you do have to take a break for a moment, to take a step back, to let your brain calm down, to try to resolve whatever stress that you have going on in your life. Then you can go out and do the thing that you really want to do. That said, our lives are not going to be perfect. You're not going to have a totally stress-free, like, the stars are never going to align absolutely perfectly for you to go out and do the thing. But there are certainly levels of stress that once you get there, you're not going to be able to focus on the things that you want to do. Once you get to that fight or flight mode, you're not going to be able to go out and, I don't know, learn how to do watercolor painting if you really have to get this report done. So that I would not really call procrastination. It certainly is a distraction from the things you want to do, but it's a necessity of life. So with all that in mind, is procrastination really a problem? For some people, they would say, yeah, I procrastinate, but I get everything done when it's, like, at the end of the day, I still get everything done. So some people would say it's not a problem. Some people say that it is a problem. I'm personally the camp that says it is a problem in most situations. But I still want to acknowledge that there are some benefits to procrastinating. So what are some of those benefits? I had 3 that came to mind for me. The first is sometimes you think of better ways to do the thing. Whatever your project is, whatever the skill you want to do is, all that. If you have a deadline for yourself and you're putting off doing the work, waiting, just thinking about it, waffling it over for a long period of time, perhaps you'll think up some better way to do it that you wouldn't have thought up otherwise, and you would then have to go and redo the work again later. So if you put it off and you just sort of waffle through life a little bit, eventually you might come up with this interesting idea that you realize, wait a second, this way of doing it would be much better than the way I was originally going to do it. So there's that potential benefit of procrastination. I don't necessarily stand with it, but it's a possibility. Next is that some people claim that they can create higher quality products from procrastinating. This sort of goes along with my point 3 with this, where some people claim that they work better under pressure, so they'll wait until the last minute to do the thing. And to that I say, really? From what I've seen, most people don't perform better under a lot of pressure. Certainly a little bit of pressure, but you should have enough pressure anyways from having a set deadline, or having something that you want to do should be enough pressure, or the idea that I want to do this thing, I'm going to have it looming in the back of my head that perhaps if I don't do this thing, I'll just, it'll be there for the rest of my life, and there'll be this incessant voice there saying, you didn't do the thing. And that's, to me, seems like it would be pressure enough for most people to go out and do the work. But some people claiming that they work better under a lot of pressure, where they have to wait until last minute to do the thing, I call BS on that. When I look at people who turn in work early, who decide I'm going to focus on doing this thing before the deadline is done, oftentimes, more often than not, I almost always see people give better work who do it earlier, who take their time on it. Note, I'm not saying procrastinating. I'm not saying take your time as in procrastinating. I'm saying take your time as in they're able to manage out their priorities in such a way that they're able to work on the thing over a protracted period of time so that they still finish on time or finish early, and they've put in a lot of effort into doing this thing. Almost always, they have a better result and a better quality of work compared to the person who waited till the last minute and under pressure typed up whatever paper or worked on whatever project they were doing to ultimately submit like 5 minutes before the deadline. So yeah, that's some people's claim that they tend to do better under extreme pressure. I highly doubt it. What are some of the downsides of procrastinating? For me, one of the main ideas that came to mind is that you have a persistent mental tax from not doing the thing. If you just do the thing, it's out of sight, out of mind. If you do the thing, you don't have to worry about it. Compared to the person who waits and procrastinates and puts it off, it's always going to be lingering in the back of their head of, hey, you're not doing the thing right now. You should probably do the thing right now. Or that thing is coming up. You should probably work on it. Compare that to the person who's already done the thing. Well, congratulations. They don't have to worry about it. It's done. It's turned in. It's whatever. Another downside of procrastinating is that some people just don't do the thing at all. This is especially in the case where you don't have a deadline for it. This is a thing that you just want to do individually. It's you want to learn watercoloring. It's you want to write the book. It's you want to learn how to bake or to dance or how to do whatever. But you keep on putting it off because, oh, life isn't perfect. Or, oh, I have a little bit too much stress right now. Or, I don't know, just something. Life is never going to be perfect. Yes, there are certainly worse times than others to start doing the thing, but you have to decide eventually, when am I going to do this thing? When is enough where I can say, okay, my life isn't perfect, but it's good enough right now where I can go out and do the thing and I can build this habit and I can learn and I can enjoy it. Life is meant to be enjoyed, not just, oh, I'm going to put that thing off forever. There's a quote that I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it's along the lines of delayed gratification to the extreme means never getting gratified or never experiencing gratification in the first place. So some people just don't do the thing at all if you procrastinate long enough. Another point is that some people have a reduced sense of self-confidence from procrastinating in the sense that you say you're going to do the thing, but then you keep on breaking the promises that you make to yourself. If you were talking to your best friend and they broke as many promises to you that you break to yourself, how long will they be your best friend? How long will they be your friend? How long will they be even an acquaintance that you would want to work with? People who break their promises are not trustworthy people. And so, how many times have you broken promises you've made to yourself, saying, I'm going to go do this thing, or I'm going to start the book, I'm going to start watercolor painting. I don't know why I'm so deep into watercolor painting right now. I'm not even doing it. But, point standing, how often do we break promises to ourselves saying that we're going to do the thing, and then we procrastinate and we don't do the thing? We just lower our self-confidence and make it even harder and harder and harder. We start building this narrative around ourselves of, oh, I'm someone who doesn't do the things that I say I'm going to do, even to myself. And you start going down this downward spiral. And the more you do it, the harder it's going to be to break out of that downward spiral. Sometimes you need a push, sometimes you need a nudge, but it is easy. You can break out of that, but it's so easy to fall back into it when you procrastinate things, when you say, I'll do it eventually, and you never do it. Finally, the last thing I want to touch on for the downsides of procrastinating, and there are much more, is that typically, from what I've seen, worse performance in doing the thing. I see this far more often than people performing well under pressure. I already mentioned this under the benefits section, but gotta reiterate this. In almost every situation, when I see someone doing work, if they are procrastinating on it and pushing it off to the last minute, it's going to be of lesser quality compared to the person who does the work up front and has more time to think about it and isn't waiting until the last minute to do it. I can't think of any situation or any time where someone submitting a piece of work that they waited to do on the last minute was better than the work someone put up front, did a lot of effort on, especially if they're relatively similar people in most situations. I personally can't think of any situation I've seen where that procrastinating person has done better than the not procrastinating person. So, yeah, those are my rough examples of pros and cons of procrastinating. So with all that in mind, what are some tips and tricks to overcoming procrastination and to do more of the things that you want to do? I will note that all of these require some level of discipline, but to be honest, you can't do anything in life without some level of discipline. Even going with the flow in some ways requires some form of discipline. That said, with some of these tools, even personal discipline may be optional or can be much less than you might need otherwise. Starting off with my first and probably one of my favorite ways to try to kick procrastination in the butt is Parkinson's law. The idea behind Parkinson's law is that you will fill the time that you're given to do a task. For example, the college student who's given the full semester to write a paper and then submit it on the last day. That student will often put off doing that paper almost the entire semester. Then they'll approach the end of the semester and they'll think to themselves, "Oh crap, that paper I have to write, it's due in a week, or it's due in 2 to 3 days." And they suddenly think, "I don't have time for this." So they go to the professor, they beg, they beg, but no, the professor says, "No, this was the assignment that we gave, you're going to do it." And they magically, in that last little bit of time, that last week to 2.5 days or so, they grind and grind and grind, and through some form of magic, they're able to produce that paper. Now, is it amazing? No, but they produce the paper, they submit it, and it does well enough. Humans are amazing at being able to do things within a allotted amount of time. So if you're given a deadline for something, almost always people will magically fill in that will do the thing within that deadline, unless it's a government project or a military project, because we all know that those will never finish on time. So on an individual level, though, Parkinson's law can be used quite effectively, and how we like to do this in the world of self-development is we want to set our own personal deadlines ahead of time, where perhaps it's, oh, I have to write this paper, it's due by the end of the semester. But instead of waiting to the end of the semester, perhaps you say, okay, it's due at the end of the semester, I'm going to set my own personal deadline to be like maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier, because maybe I have a concert I want to go to 2 or 3 weeks earlier. I want to finish my paper by the time I go to that concert. And then there you go. You have your own personal built-in deadline. By doing that, you're able to essentially use Parkinson's law to your advantage by saying, instead of following this other person's deadline, I have my own. By doing that, you're able to sort of readjust in your mind, what will it take to finish this task by this deadline? So even though if you start quote unquote procrastinating, so long as you get your own deadline, you're still going to be ahead in the long run. So that's one example, one tool that you can potentially use to overcome some level of procrastination. The next one that's probably the most effective is an accountability buddy. Not just a phone call, not just a morning text of, hey, did you do the thing? But someone who will actually kick your butt into gear to do the thing. This is especially good and especially helpful for physical activities. For example, an accountability buddy to go to the gym with. And one of the best ways that I've heard this being used is you and a friend each go to the same gym. And what you do is every other day or every other whatever metric or time frame you want to do it, you drive to their house and pick them up to take them to the gym, and the other time they'll flip it around so that they go to your house, pick you up, and take you to the gym. And you do that back and forth, and you have someone to keep you accountable to actually do the thing. This, by far, is probably the most effective way to overcome procrastination. The problem is when both of you are big procrastinators, because if both of you are big procrastinators, it suddenly becomes much easier to say, oh, actually, I don't want to do the thing. Hey, bro, do you want to do the thing? Like, no, I don't really want to do the thing. So you got to be careful about who you choose as your accountability buddy, or even better, add a couple accountability people into your group to say, we are all going to do this thing, and try to include at least one person who does have a higher level of self-discipline to be able to actually kick everyone into gear to say, no, we said we're doing this thing, we're doing the thing. Get up, I'm on my way to your house, we're going to go to the gym. Something like that. So, accountability buddies, by far, probably my most recommended tool that you can use to help overcome procrastination. The next one I want to touch on is apps, tools, and software. There are a number of different tools designed to help you eliminate distractions, to help you focus on the task at hand. For example, we have productivity trackers, we have blocking apps, and we have do not disturb functions on your phone. Just a couple of apps that I want to list out. Personally, I don't use these. I've never really had to use these, but I've heard of people using them to some success. There's Cold Turkey, there's the Forest app, there's Todoist, sort of like to-do list, but without the L. There's Freedom app, there's Trello, and there's much more. I've heard of Trello, but it's mostly, from what I've seen, it's mostly used for more business and project management sort of stuff. But I could see it being used for productivity tracking. So yeah, it's interesting, but I'm not sure if I would really include it in the category of overcoming procrastination, but perhaps. Anyways, there are a number of different tools, apps, and softwares that you can use to help you try to overcome procrastination. And each of them is done and designed differently. Like I said before, I personally don't use these. I have my own system where I use a weekly to-do list of sorts, where each week I have each day listed out, and under each day I have a priority order list of first thing, second thing, third thing. So actually moving on from the apps, tools, and software is priority lists. I don't like to-do lists for this. I like priority lists. And how this works is that you organize your day based on the order of importance of the task at hand. So start off with listing out what's the single most important thing to do for the day. Then what's the second most important thing to do for the day. Third, and so on. But for this to work, don't confuse urgency and importance. People are great at making the unimportant sound urgent. For example, oh, I really have to take this package and ship it today. Oh, I really have to do laundry today. Or I really have to do XYZ things. Sometimes you can have very urgent things that aren't actually that important. Sometimes you have very important things that aren't actually that urgent. So you got to learn how to differentiate urgency and importance. At the same time, you will occasionally find things that are both urgent and important. So when you can take care of those, take it on a case-by-case basis. So back to how I use my priority lists. I have a mix of a to-do list and a priority list, where every week I have a Google Doc that is a template that I copy-paste every single week. And in it, I have a section for every single day. At the top section, I'll have my everyday stuff that I do repeatedly, time and time again, whether that's my workouts, that's my daily planning, it's all that stuff in there. Then I have my general tasks for the day, or my general categories for the day. For me, that's podcasting, that's writing, that's like other business stuff, that's work, that's all of the stuff that I might do that will vary from day to day. Then below that, I have my other list, and finally at the very bottom, I have my priority order list. So I'll fill out the general tasks based on each section first, then my other section, then finally I'll take all those tasks and I'll order it by priority. So for example, today, in my priority list, I set doing Cast of All Trades recording to be my number one most important priority thing for today. Then closely following that, I wanted to do some editing and I wanted to do some scheduling of podcast clips. Those are my three most important things for the day. So once I get those three things done, I can move on to other tasks. The idea of using a priority list is that you're looking at your day and you're saying, if I could get only one of these tasks done today, what will be the one thing where if I got that done today or I made meaningful progress on it, I would be satisfied? Then you can say, okay, perhaps I finished that thing up early and have more time in the day. What would be the second most important thing where if I finished up the first thing, what would be the next thing I would want to work on where I could say, if I finished up these two things today, these would be the most important things that I could do, and I would feel satisfied at the end of the day. And you keep on asking that, typically going, I like to set it to 3 things max, because if you have 4, 5, 6 quote-unquote priorities, suddenly your priority list just becomes another to-do list. So limit yourself to having 3 priorities at max. So what I like to do is I like to have 3 priorities, and then at the bottom below that, I like to say, if you finish up these 3 things, you're welcome to do anything else on this list. It doesn't matter. So that's how I can work out what's the most important thing for me to do, what's the least important thing for me to do, and I can go in that order. By doing that, I can overcome procrastination because I know if I'm going to work on something, it has to be the first priority thing of the day, or it has to be the second priority thing of the day, and so on. So, what are some other ideas that you can do to overcome procrastination? Another idea is to do something even more difficult. So, you might say, wait a second, Orion, doing something more difficult? How would doing something more difficult make me procrastinate less? When we procrastinate, we often go and do something slightly easier than the thing we have to / want to do. So, instead of doing that, what if you went to go and do something harder, something more difficult, something slightly more irritating? Then, you can actually procrastinate on the harder thing by doing the thing you really want to do. It's a little reverse psychology of sorts. For example, say that you don't want to clean your room. Normally, you might go and get a snack instead to procrastinate going and cleaning your room. What if instead you said, okay, I recognize I'm trying to procrastinate. How about I go pull out my taxes and I start doing my taxes? You pull out your taxes, you sit down, you start doing it, and either one or two things will happen. You'll say, actually, I do need to do my taxes, and you'll do your taxes. And okay, I guess that's still a good thing. Another thing that's more likely to happen is you'll say, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing my taxes? I'm going to go clean my room. It's much easier. And there you go. You end up doing the thing you really wanted to do instead. So this one can be interesting. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's an interesting reverse psychology idea that could work out well in the long run for some people. Next is the 2-minute rule. If it takes less than 2 minutes to do it now. There's a mental like a mental tax overhead from waiting on doing a bunch of smaller tasks until later. So if you have just a bunch of small stuff, then don't wait, just do it, especially if it's going to take very little amount of time. Because as I just said, there's a mental overhead tax from not doing the thing and thinking constantly to yourself, oh yeah, I have to do this thing as well, and this thing, and this thing, and this thing. And in your mind, it'll take up much more space than it really should or than it really has to. Because in reality, it's not going to take all that long to do. So if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, just do the thing. Next, in a similar vein, is the 2-day rule, where this is one that is better for building habits, and is especially good if you're trying to make a good habit on something that you often procrastinate. This is never skip something for 2 days in a row, because that's destroying one habit and replacing it with another. For example, I like to work out at least 6 days a week. So for me, if I'm going to skip a workout, I have to acknowledge, okay, if I'm skipping a workout, I have to do the rest of them this week. If I skip a workout, I cannot skip one the next day as well. So no matter what, I have to do the thing at least, like I can skip it one day, but I have to do it at least every other day because I cannot skip 2 days in a row. This rule allows you to give some leniency of sorts to allow you to do some procrastination and also still getting your work done in the long run by building up good habits and saying, okay, I have to do this thing because I skipped it yesterday, therefore I cannot skip it today. Next is eat the frog, do the most difficult thing first. This is another idea kind of similar to the priority order list, but where it's essentially the idea that we lose willpower throughout the day. So early in the morning is almost always the best time to do the most difficult thing first. That way you have the most willpower at your disposal. Have you ever gone through a day and you try to do something very difficult at the end of the day and you're more likely to procrastinate it? That's because you've already spent all your mental energy earlier on in the day doing the stuff that perhaps wasn't all that important, or the stuff that was quote-unquote urgent but not important. If you flip that around to say, okay, I'm going to do the hard stuff first things first, then you'll spend more energy early on in the day, true, but you also won't need as much energy later on in the day. You do the most difficult tasks first, so you can have trickle-down energy to work on the easier stuff later. If you do all the easier stuff first, guess what? You're probably not going to have the energy to do the hard stuff later. So focus on the more difficult stuff first, then you can do easier stuff later and later and later, and stuff that will require less willpower later on in the day. Okay, I got 2 more for you. Next one is to break down projects into smaller tasks. This is especially good for bigger projects or bigger things that you say, for example, I want to write a book. People will look at that and they'll look at the summit of the mountain and they'll ask, how am I going to take this? How am I going to make it to the top in one single bound? Forgetting that we can only scale it one step at a time. By taking the book example, we can say, I want to write a book, instead of looking at the end product and saying, I want to write that. Start with, I'm going to do some research on the topic that I want to write this book on. I'm going to write an outline. I'm going to write a section of an outline. Then say, I'm going to take this outline, I'm going to write the introduction section. I'm going to write a little bit of the introduction. Then you can say, I'm going to write the first section of the first chapter, and break it down into small and simple steps, step by step by step. By breaking down these big projects, one, procrastination becomes much less of a thing that happen, because instead of looking at this one big terrifying thing, thinking to yourself, I'm scared to do that because I'm scared I'm going to fail, you're going to look at the thing and say, okay, I don't have to get all the way up there today. I don't have to make it to the summit today. I could just have to make it 2 steps forward, or just 1 step forward. And by breaking it down into smaller tasks like that, it makes it easier on the mind to comprehend. It also makes it easier to implement these tasks into a priority order list, because by having smaller tasks, by having a bunch of smaller tasks, you can say, okay, if I want to get a bunch of things done today, I'm going to set number 1 priority on my list is to work on the first section of chapter 1 of my book. The second most important thing of the day is going to work and doing whatever. The third most important thing of the day is doing whatever the third most important thing is. It makes it easier to protract this long project into a long series of steps so you can do bit by bit by bit. Finally, probably the best and easiest way to overcome procrastination when trying to do anything is, at the end of the day, if you can make it fun, no matter what you're doing, you're more likely to do the thing. There's a reason that we often distract ourselves with things that seem fun, because our brain likes fun things. So instead of treating whatever task you're doing as if it's some big, dull, boring project, try to make it fun in some way. Either make it so that you have a reward at the end of it, or have little bits of fun all throughout it. There's different ways that you can have fun doing different projects. Just look for the bright side, try to enjoy it, because ultimately that's going to be the best way to overcome whatever procrastination you may have and actually do the thing. In summary, there are many ways to fight back against your procrastination. That said, sometimes you really do just need to take a step back and chill for a while. So what do you think? Have you tried any of these tricks? How have they worked out for you? And did I miss any that you would recommend? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share with a friend you think would like it, or share it on social media. It would absolutely mean the world to me, and it helps the podcast grow so much. With all that said, thanks for listening. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later. Ciao.